I read a very interesting book. Today is Wednesday, the 20th of May. On Monday, I finished The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I guess that I read quite a big part of it on Monday. I finished it maybe this much. So to be honest, I bought this book just because I saw it everywhere, so I didn't even know what it is about. And I started reading it because I wanted to discover Donna Tartt's works and also understand why this book is so popular and everyone seems to love it. The main character is a college student who arrives to Hamden College, and he sees there a group of 5 friends who all study classics and ancient Greek, and he eventually joins them and he becomes the part of the group. The whole story is like a crime, mysterious murder novel. It is an inverted detective story. That means that the commission of the crime is described at the beginning of the novel, and then we follow along with what happens after it. What I liked about this book is the beginning of it. I really like the atmosphere, everything to do with college, with studies of ancient Greek and classics. Also, I really appreciated the Donna Tartt's style of writing. From time to time, she uses words or phrases in different languages, like in French, in ancient Greek, in Latin. And the third thing that I really liked is that this book is filled with many references and quotes from great literature. So basically I liked how this book is written, and that is actually what made me read it till the end. But then what I disliked about this book is the plot. I didn't really enjoy reading it. Once it became about the murder, I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't quite understand where the story is leading to. This book didn't give me much to think about. I appreciated the style of writing, but then it's not very thought-provoking for me, and thus I didn't really enjoy it. But I'm still looking forward to reading The Goldfinch, which I suppose is quite different, but this was not a success for me. On Tuesday, the 19th of May, I read a Russian book called История одного города, which is the history of a town, by Mikhail Saltykov-Shchedrin. And I didn't have the copy of this book, so I read an ebook, so I'll just put the picture here. I read it for my literature class, and I think that if it wasn't for my literature class, I think I would never make myself read it till the end, because it's quite a difficult read and not very enjoying and not interesting, but it is important for the history of Russian literature. This book was written at the end of 19th century. It looks like a real historical document which tells about the rulers and historical events of one town, but in fact it is a satirical novel, and it is a big satire on the history of Russia. And that brings us to the third day, which is today, is Wednesday. But today I decided to read the short stories in French that my friends advised me, Thomas and Morgan, and they are written by the French famous author Maupassant. Maupassant. He also lived and wrote at the end of 19th century. He is considered as the classics of French literature. I also don't have a copy of his work, but I will put a picture here. For now, I only read one story, which is La Parure. I think it is translated as necklace. I'm actually very glad, because that's the first time I read classical French literature in the original version, which is like the not Le Petit Nicolas, but actually something important, something of big cultural, historical value. I find the Maupassant's style of writing similar to Chekhov's. Chekhov is a Russian classical author. He is also famous for his short novels that usually have a very unpredictable ending, and Maupassant has as well very unpredictable ending, at least in the La Parure, in the necklace. I'm going to read more of Maupassant's stories. I will actually tell you the ones that I chose. Le Papa de Simon, and I also found Sur le, I think, and something about Mont Saint-Michel. Yesterday I read some other stories by Maupassant that I told you about. I think yesterday I mentioned that I think that his style is similar to Chekhov's, and actually some critics of literature even mentioned it, like Maupassant and Chekhov are the masters of short story genre in the history of literature. On Thursday, today, I read a very interesting book of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I think that so far this is my favorite read from this week's books. This is a classic of American literature, and the story is set in California during the Great Depression. What I found really cool when I started reading it immediately is the language. It is the Southern American kind of English. Yeah, basically the words, how they shorten every word, how they combine them together. The story is just about these two men who set from one place where they worked to another where they want to find a work. One of them is just a normal guy, and another one is a bit weird because he acts like a child. He's very childish, and also I think that this type of hero is kind of common in literature. I can think of different other books or stories in where there is this type of person who is very childish and he can't harm anyone on purpose, but he does harm people when he doesn't want to. But I think what Steinbeck and some other writers who have this type of hero want to say is that they want to emphasize how cruel and awful our world is, the world and the relationships between humans that we consider normal. And when there is a person who is genuinely very, very kind and he can't even imagine doing something bad to another person, when we see this character and how he is considered not normal and stupid or crazy, we see how actually our world is screwed up. When we meet this kind of character in literature, we rethink our own behavior and behavior of people around us, and we can see how actually weird and not right our behavior and our world is, and not these characters. It's just what I think. Well, even on the front of this book there's a quote: maybe everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other. Hi guys, today is Sunday the 24th of May and I'm here to end my 7 day 7 books challenge, and I will tell you what books I read the 3 previous days. On Friday, it was May 22nd, I started reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus. One of my first English teachers from New Zealand brought me this book from New Zealand, so it's a very special book for me. I was very excited to read it as I am a fan of Gothic novels and a fan of Jane Austen and Bronte sisters' works. And I liked it, but not as much as other Gothic novels, to be honest. I really liked the Old English and the language that is used in this novel, but unfortunately also it was difficult to read it because of the language, and I was advancing really slowly, and so actually I spent 2 days reading it. I started on Friday and I finished on Saturday. So, as you may know, the story is about a man who created a kind of a human creature, or more like a monster. Many people think that Frankenstein is the monster that was created. I was one of these people too for a long time. But in fact, Frankenstein is the name of the creator. So Victor Frankenstein is the name of the main character of this novel. The narration in the story is very peculiar also, because it starts with the letters of some man who travels in the Arctic Sea, and then he actually meets Frankenstein, and Frankenstein then tells him the story of his life, of how he had created the monster, his wretch, hideous wretch. And I know that it is connected with the ancient Greek myth about the Titan Prometheus. I think that Mary Shelley, she makes a parallel between Frankenstein, who had created a kind of human being, with the Prometheus, who was then punished. Then, as I said, I spent 2 days on Frankenstein, and so yesterday at the evening, when I finished Frankenstein, it was Saturday, and I was already kind of tired, and so I only read a play by Chekhov, The Cherry Orchard. This is a very famous play. It is classical Russian literature. Chekhov not only wrote the short stories, but he also wrote many very, very famous plays. And I think in almost all theater in Russia, there will be plays by Chekhov. And so The Cherry Orchard is a story about a family in Russia at the beginning of 20th century, or like at the end of 19th, at the beginning of 20th century, who became broke. They don't have any money and they have to sell their house and their cherry orchard, or like cherry garden, that they really, really love. And so the whole story is just about how this process was held, what they think. The next year at school we will study this play. And today, on the last day of my challenge, I read Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, which is also a play. Yeah, I was kind of tired of reading big books, so I read 2 plays. It is also very famous and very, very important in like the history of literature and theater. I think that this play was originally written in French, yes, and it is called En attendant Godot. But then Samuel Beckett, he was Irish and he wrote both in French and English, and so he translated his play to English as well. And this play is very, very strange. Like, it's not what you expect from literature, it's not what you expect from plays in general. There's no story like this. Samuel Beckett is the author of modernism in literature. He kind of created the genre, or like the movement in literature and in theater that was called the theater of absurd. So there are 2 main characters, Victor and Estragon. All that they do is they just talk to each other, and throughout the whole play they wait for the arrival of Godot, and that's all. Like, there's nothing that actually happens. They wait for this creature. We don't know who it is, why they want him to arrive. Since this play was so absurdist and not explaining anything, it opened many doors to interpretations, philosophical, historical, political, and many others. But Samuel Beckett himself never explained what he actually meant, and he left the audience and the readers to wonder, to think about what he wrote. And actually at the back of my book it's written, "When are they going to stop making me mean more than I say?" Some people think that Waiting for Godot talks about the existentialism and like the primordial questions of life, like the questions of life, death, and the meaning of human existence. I personally agree with this interpretation. It shows how human existence is actually meaningless and we don't know what we actually expect in our life. Maybe we're all just do nothing and wait for Godot. I was really glad to finally finish and read the books that I wanted to read for a long time, and so I hope to talk about books more on this channel in the future. Goodbye, thank you for watching.